Ameet. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. So, welcome to the PPC Gals podcast. Today is very unscripted because you started to tell me a story, and I was like, I need to actually finish hearing this story. So, today I'm going to kind of prompt you and then get you on your Ameet roll, your
Perfect.
Ameet
I'm
vent.
excited.
So, you told me a story about a client's PPC account being held hostage. Can you start telling me what you told me before?
Yeah, I mean, like this, I mean, you know this already, but it's not like an uncommon thing. It's just that I hadn't seen it in a little while. So it was September of 2024, so not too long ago. This client's been following me on Instagram for quite some time, and he was kind of like on my hit list in a sense. So when he came through the door, I was so happy. And he kind of came back and he was just like, okay, we've been working with this agency for X amount of years. Things are okay. We bought them because like they do traditional media as well. So they packaged up a whole nice deal for us. And we were like, yeah, it's perfect. But he's like, now the more I watch content and learn from you, but also other people, I'm starting to wonder if this actually makes any sense. So as we're like kind of going through this whole process, I'm just going, okay, well, who has account ownership? And he kind of looks at me blankly and just goes, what do you mean by that? And I was like, well, do you have access to your own account? And he goes, no. And I'm like, guaranteed in the contract, I would bet my life savings that you do not own this account. I own it and you have literally a dashboard. And he basically came back and was like, yeah, that's actually very true. So then he kind of just like looks at me and he goes, okay, well, what do we do? And in cases like this, truly, if you don't have the ad account number, you are, for a lack of a better phrase, screwed.
Yeah.
You have no options. Really, really, really sucky, but it is what it is. If you have the ad account number, you might be able to finagle with the Google ad reps to see if they can like, locate the account, verify that you're the owner, and then maybe take it away from the agency. But like that's a multi-month type of ordeal. And especially with customer support where it is now, I don't think it would actually ever happen. I think you'd probably be waiting 6 months before you cut your ties and go, I might as well just start all over. So that's essentially what we ended up having to do was having to start all over on that front. And that was really kind of, it wasn't ideal, but also at the same time, I guess it was for us. So like when we're talking about it in regards to like why it wasn't ideal, my retort is going to be the fact that there's so much data in there. Like this client is spending maybe about 10K a month, I think it was at that time.
Wow.
For
Okay.
years.
Okay.
So
Wow.
we're talking maybe close to
Wow.
$1 million.
Wow.
Maybe
Wow.
of data. Like there's just so much there's so much ad spend and so much data in there that we could have kind of taken and tried to figure out what was working and what wasn't. And we didn't get that opportunity. And like that's where my heart really breaks for clients because I'm like, you spent, let's say it was a full million. I haven't really figured out the actual number, but like let's say it's a full million. You spent 4 millions over like 4 years or whatever. And then you gave it to this agency and they did whatever maybe they did something with it, maybe they didn't, who knows. And then at the end of it all, you paid for it while you paid for them to keep this and collect this data. And now they're not even giving it back to you.
I mean, that's insane. I guess so. Clearly, based on what you're telling me, PPC advertising was very important to their overall revenue. It literally would hurt them to start over. And, I've heard someone you and I both know say you have to buy data, which is true. So they had to start all over again and rebuy that data that they had bought for at least that first couple of years, and then the collective as a whole. Certainly heartbreaking because I think we associate the accounts being held hostage with small business clients that don't know any better. And so to hear that a large business spending a good amount of money was a victim to this is just sad, especially since it's something you and I scream about on LinkedIn. But you and I also know that business owners don't spend all their time looking at PPC on LinkedIn. We're kind of, for the most part, talking to other PPCers and getting that, scream out louder and hoping it comes through, right? That we, shame agencies like this.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm going to back up just because our audience may not quite understand what like the held hostage, because you and I say, we know it's in the contract. Can you talk about like what that specific means and what they can't actually access and how you see this manifests?
Yeah, so usually the first tell sign obviously is the contract. So if you're reading through the contract and there's nothing said about account ownership, that's a little murky. If it does have an ownership clause, which most agencies probably do have, I haven't seen a new contract from like any of these agencies that hold hostage in a while, but usually more often than not, there is an account ownership clause in the contract that either stipulates that the client owns access or the agency has the access. So make sure that you're checking that first and foremost before you even sign on with an agency. But like just a couple questions to be asking as well. Like if the agency is the one who's creating the account, are you going to have access to it? Is a really good sign on whether or not you're going to get your account back at the end. Right. So for us, our first and foremost thing is like, yeah, we'll create the account, but like you have to be the one to add in the billing information. You're the one who has to have account ownership. At the end of it all, we'll remove ourselves, but there needs to be somebody there in your company that has access to it. Because I don't want to hold on to that. I feel like it's a liability. I know that it technically
100%.
isn't, but it just feels like one to me.
It does. It does. I totally agree. Like, if you were to take this, so they ended up becoming a client, like, what would you say the consequences ended up being once they signed on with you? Did you feel like they were losing sales and brand visibility starting over? I mean, I would expect yes, but were you able to move quickly through that?
There's like pros and cons of both sides of this because I do understand, like, obviously, who wants to start an account from scratch when you literally have $1 million in an ad account sitting somewhere? But at the same time, if an agency is willing to hold that account hostage, I'm wondering what else they're
Yeah.
willing to do. Are they willing to neglect negative keywords? Are they willing to neglect correct conversion tracking? Are they willing to neglect not or ARs, automated or
Yeah. Yeah.
applied recommendations, however, whatever that's how it's supposed to be said. But like, are they willing to just be like, yeah, it's fine? Are they willing to create a PMAX campaign and then never look at it again because it does it by itself? Like, there are so many other factors in here where I just sit there and I'm like, even if I got the ad account, would I have wanted it? And I don't have an answer for that ever. More often than not, the answer is yes,
Yeah.
just because I want to see. I want to see if
Right.
there's
I
maybe
would
some
have.
keyword data in there that tells me what's working, what isn't. But on the flip side, when we do have to start all over again, we literally have to start all over again. We don't know what was working, which means that we have to go back into spending more money testing everything all over again and buying that data that Menachem had mentioned before. Like you had mentioned that Menachem had said before. So like that it's that part. And then obviously on our end, we want to do it all correctly. So then it just goes back down to like, okay, let's start the negative keyword list all over again. Let's look at the conversion tracking all over again. Naturally, if we're doing an account switch like that, there's going to be a period where you're just going to see like the most horrendous results on
Mhm.
your end, especially if you're switching agents. Well, not even if you're switching agencies, even if you're just switching ad accounts, right? Because you went from like something that was like boiling water to basically just putting a new cold pot of water on the stove all over again. It's not warm. You're not going to be able to get it. You're not going to be able to cook the pasta basically, right? So same notion here is that we're not able to move as fast as we wanted to because we don't have that information. So yeah, pros and cons on both sides. Pro that we don't actually have dirty, inaccurate data, but on the other hand, we don't have any data, which
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a huge, huge factor. And we see this more oftentimes than not. I think, you and I, as veterans in the industry, sometimes feel like, wow, everybody has their agency at this point. And so when you open up something like this, you're like, no, actually, like we do serve a large purpose. We just need to scream louder into the void and make sure that clients avoid this because at the end of the day, our job is to do good and to help clients and offer our expertise that we have spent what collectively 30 years developing, right? And just really articulate for them like why you should own your account, why you need to buy data. And then I would say also what all that data is telling you about your business and what the next steps are.
yeah, because that's how we make a decision, right? Is based off of like what we have in front of us. And unfortunately, in this case, we don't really have much. So we can go to Google Analytics and we can look at Search Console and kind of get some kind of idea of what was happening. But even there, sometimes the agencies hold that hostage. Like I've had agencies hold G4 or not G4, but UA at that time hostage. Like we couldn't get it back. There's plenty of agencies and I still have access to these right now, which is absolutely the hysterical part where they have one, oh, I'm totally going to get the terminology wrong, but like one property, but multiple assets underneath it in
Yeah.
Google Analytics,
Yeah.
but it's all different websites,
Yeah.
all of their client websites under one property.
Yes, I've seen that. I've seen that. Yeah.
So then
And
all of a sudden when they're transferring over, guess who gets access to their entire client book?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, fun for me, right? But like at the same time, you have to sit there and think about it from like the other flip side of being the client for this company. I now have access to your
Right.
GY.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Because
I
your agency
shouldn't,
messed up. No, I would
right?
agree.
Your agency messed up. So even if you're in there and you're looking at it and going, oh, I have access to all of these other client accounts, I would be very concerned.
Yeah, no, I would as well.
And
Yeah.
that might be a good sign for you to be like, okay, maybe it's actually I need to leave this agency. Because, like, really, truly, you should have your own property. You should be able to take it and give it to whoever you want. And that's just not possible when you're working with an agency that houses everything under one account, basically, or
And
even under like a GTM, where you can kind of move those around. But
a lot of this is also common in what I always say are these niche industries, right? So you'll see it a lot through med spa, auto, where it's just, oh, every time we get an account, we automatically build it from scratch. There's the assumption that the agency owns it because everybody is duplicating the business model of others in the industry. Definitely, if you're going to a niche agency, which I always harp against those, I think they're something to be very careful of. Is, we only do roofers. Well, why do you only do roofers? Because you know how to talk to roofers, and you know that roofers may not be paying attention to their ads account, and you can scam them, right? Like, talk
it's
to a
boilerplate.
yes, boilerplate. Yeah, that's your favorite boilerplate
It's my
PPC.
favorite. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember somebody was like literally was like, "Well, what makes you different than this agency?" And like this was years and years and years ago, and I remember I sat there and I was like, "Everything I do is custom to you. I do not go into another account, copy and paste it back into your.
exactly.
That's just not how that
Yep,
works for me."
yep,
And
yep.
they just sat there and stared at me, and I'm like, "What I'm telling you is that the other agency that you are interviewing against me is gonna do that to you." So I'm like, the choice is yours, right? Like at the end of the day, yeah, his price point might be slower than mine, but like that's because he's not doing a lot of the work. He's did it
Exactly.
once and he's replicating. I do it custom every damn time.
Yeah.
There's
Yep.
going to be a price difference. He ended up going with the other option, which sucked, but like it is what it is, right? Like sometimes people are going to choose the less expensive option and that's okay, but it's just more or less of knowing what you're getting into. Like your campaign's not custom to you. It's just another generic campaign that's going to get you mediocre results and that's probably
Yeah.
about it. And
Yeah.
especially if you're working with an agency that is okay with boilerplate, that means that their optimizations are likely not going to be custom
Right.
to your ad account. They're going to be like these general, like check bids,
If
add
that.
negatives.
So if that.
Yeah.
And the reason I
If
say
that.
if that is because I find, and I mean, this could potentially go down a rabbit hole, the types of agencies that have boilerplate strategies and would hold contracts hostage aren't secure in their paid search, and they don't bring in high level PPC talent who would in that interview process say, no, this is clearly not moral. Like, I would not take a job where I had to act in a way that is not congruent with my brand because I value my brand as a PPCer above what any type of paycheck from that could be. So yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, all of that. So as far as this, are there any closing insights you have other than please, for the love of God, set up your ad account and own it?
Yeah, just really my favorite one is literally repeating the fact of check your contract.
Yeah. Yep.
Like those are legally binding. If they hold the account away from you, at least you can do something about it.
Yep. I love that.
Like it's just for me, it's more or less of I've been running a business long enough to know that I need to be proactive and not reactive. So that's constantly what is in my mind, even when other or not agencies, sorry, other potential clients come our way and they're like, oh, we're interviewing other people. Like I'll always stop and be like, okay, here are the things that you need to check with the other agency. Even if you don't go with us, I don't care. Right? There's plenty of work out there. I'm not worried. But like what I am worried is that you're going to get screwed. So can I give
Yes.
you a couple things to walk out with being like, this is how I'm going to interview the other agency for the love of, I'm like, just listen to me. I'm like, I swear you're not going to regret this. It'll be fine. Just listen to me. I don't care that much if you don't come to us. So that's usually my go-to is just like, honestly, interview more than one agency. Don't go to one. Even if it's a referral,
Yes, I would
interview
agree.
multiple,
Yeah, I would agree.
right? Like your referral might be wrong. Like it more often than not, there aren't, but like you never know, right? That person might have been duped as well, and they're just believing that they're getting great results, and they're like, come to this agency, and they might not know that their account is hostage. So like just making sure that you're kind of doing that due diligence, but making like, yeah, don't put your eggs in one basket. Double check, we'll check who you're going to be working with, but also just interview a couple other people and just see how the language changes between those agencies, especially when you're asking questions around account ownership. They give you a straight answer, like what Hop Skip would do, which is, yeah, you own everything. And after 3 months, or not 3 months, sorry, after 30 days of leaving us, we delete everything on our end. Then it's likely, I don't think you should be working with that agency at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Well, that was perfect. So thank you so much for sharing that story. And as always, if you like this, make sure you comment. If you have a great story about holding an account hostage, or if
Eh,
you've done it as an employee, if you've been held
I don't know if
hostage,
anyone would admit to it.
yeah, keep us posted. We'd love to hear from you, and follow us wherever we are.